Hello. It's been a while now. Sorry for just showing up like that. Okay, so after coming back like 7 months after, sorry, that was due to my job's fault. I'll go back to start reading. I'm gonna continue from the last chapter. It was chapter 54. Sorry. It was chapter 54. Forget my husband. I'll go make money. The Sylvanus delegates, knights, and handmaids try to keep their composure in their seats as much as possible. But despite acting like they weren't, their eyes continue to roam the entire ceremonial hall. This was because the gorgeously decorated ceremonial hall was so different from what they expected. The royal family's grand hall could be explained as the culmination of Irigo's tremendous polishing industry, a land of fire and iron. True to its name, Irigo's metallurgy branch was very advanced. Their most advanced technology was concentrated on soul making, but of course, ornaments and interior designs also benefited plenty from that brilliant technology. Their gold was polished to the limit, and their gems were cut precisely for the most optimal reflection. Even the same gem would have different economic potential depending on how it was cut. The eyes of the Sylvanus people widened when they saw the ceremonial hall full of various sparkling jewels. I thought it was just a barbarian country. That was definitely how they ridiculed it and looked down on it. However, they couldn't dare say that this was barbaric. Wait, that can't be an argan aqua, right? Argan aqua, a silvery white tree that glowed with pure white light and was filled with sap that glowed blue. Just like how the sap of pine tree turned into amber gems after a long time, the same was true of the sap of the silver white tree. The crystallized sap was treated as a jewel and called an argan aqua. Unlike other gems that reflected light, the argan aqua was unique in that it emitted its own light. Money alone doesn't guarantee that you can get it too, because the habitat of the silver white tree was in the demonic beast plains. People had risked their lives to get one. It was like a gem that couldn't be mined despite knowing where the vein was. That rarity further raised the value of the argan aquas. Even the Sylvanus Imperial Palace only had a few argan aquas, and none of them are this big. Even when they saw an argan aqua the size of 2 fingers, they raved about how big it was. However, in the ceremonial hall, the interior was decorated with crystallized argan aqua, and even the wood of the silver white tree was used. And not only that, that's the flower, right? The one the king sent? All the flowers inside were fully bloomed and looked colorful and beautiful. And among them, there was a flower that stood out the most, an immaculate white rose, the size of a fist. It has pure white petals without the slightest flaw, but its tips drip with pink dew, like the cheeks of a shy maiden. The liver rose that can only be grown in the garden of the Queen of Irigo. The flower that the first king of Irigo personally cultivated and grew for his beloved queen. Because of that, it could not be grown anywhere other than the queen's garden. They heard that the king Irigo personally asked the queen to give her flowers to congratulate this wedding, in order to prove that she did not intentionally remove their seats during the official audience with the delegation. The queen had no choice but to send flowers to the wedding ceremony hall, while greeting her guests. Even amid all the flowers that displayed their various colors, shapes, and scents, the liver showed off its pure and elegant appearance. Unlike the Sylvanus imperial palace, where everything was arranged to match each other perfectly, the Irigo style did not look artificial overall, and it created a natural atmosphere. But if you scrutinize everything by itself, it was displaying the epitome of luxury. To think this is the wedding ceremony of the scorned princess. It was luxurious and extravagant, but elegant and refined, befitting of a royal wedding. It was a wedding that surpassed the word perfect alone. She was a princess who wore clothes worse than that of a mistress' child, let alone a young miss of a baron family. Who would have thought that a princess who couldn't even eat a proper piece of bread would end up having such a luxurious wedding? The stiff faces were ablaze with jealousy. How can the princess turn her life around with just one marriage? She shouldn't be treated like this. This is ridiculous. For a nuisance is so much lesser than me. They were incensed that the princess they had looked down on for not knowing anything had risen to the top with just one marriage. It never even crossed their mind that the princess's status was higher than theirs from the beginning. They even forgot that they had ridiculed this marriage as a union with a barbarian and derided the princess as someone who was sent to die. They only felt envious that Aristine was having a wedding that she shouldn't be worth having. The Irigo people sitting on the other side of the wedding guests area were also thinking about today's bride, Aristine. What kind of person is she? According to the people who saw the princess at the last welcome banquet, she's very pretty. For a Sylvanian, I'm sure. I doubt there's anything to see. They're so small, you know. I think the Sylvanian people are pretty. They're small and cute. Their personality are nasty, though. The people who were discussing the bride that they were yet to see glanced at Diana, who was sitting in the distance. But I wonder, what will happen to Diana and His Highness Darken? They lowered their voice and whispered, "Why are you licking the two of them? Are they really in that kind of relationship? Aren't they?" It seems like that when you look at Diana's attitude. His Highness also keeps her by his side. I think he's just not chasing her away. Their opinions differ on Tarkan and Diana's relationship, but they agreed on one thing. The princess is a bit pitiful. They were saying Aristine was lesser compared to Diana. I mean, her comparison is Diana, of all people. Diana's beauty was exceptionally prominent today. Her dress emphasized her ample breasts and slender body, making her stand out even more. With her mature and sensual beauty, Diana was popular with not only men, but women too. No matter how beautiful the princess is, she's a Sylvanian, so there are limits, ethnic-wise. Won't she look like a child if she stands next to Diana? And in the eyes of His Highness Tarkan, who is used to Diana's beauty, they all shook their heads and clicked their tongues. Before even seeing Aristine, they were certain that she was worse than Diana. Right then, a loud voice rang out through the hall. The groom, His Highness Tarkan, and the bride, Her Highness Aristine, are entering. It was the entrance of the wedding's bride and groom. The moment the two of them appear side by side, that somewhat rowdy ceremonial hall became quiet like the previous noise was a lie. Even the reporters who were waiting forgot to take pictures. The sight of the two of them walking side by side felt unreal. Tarkan, who was dressed in a formal robe, was attractive enough to make one sigh. His tall stature, broad shoulders, well-proportioned muscles were perfectly supported by his clothes. His usually careless and offside was confined by his attire. His restrained appearance stimulated the people who saw him in an ascetic manner to see him differently. Whether single or married, even if they were an old man with white hair, everyone looked at Tarkan with excitement. The flashy distinguished medals lined over his chest made all their hearts flutter, seeing the proof of honor given only to the best warrior. The warriors watching the wedding couldn't help but to sniffle. Their faces looked like they wanted to scream, "My lord is so cool." And as for the bride whom he was courting, those who were convinced that the princess would be inferior to Diana, and even felt sorry for the princess, forgot what they were going to say. At this moment, they forgot to even compare the princess with Diana. Diana completely disappeared from their minds. They felt that if there was such a thing as an absolute beauty, it would be referring to this new bride. Their prejudice that she would be unattractive because of her small stature was grinded into dust and faded away. Aristine, who was walking next to Tarkan's huge shelf, obviously looked small, but it was actually what made her stand out instead. Aristine, who looked delicate and refined, as if even a single eyelash of hers was personally crafted by God, and Tarkan with a rag and wild charm that seemed to overwhelm the earth. Because their charms differ so much from each other, it made their appeal even more pronounced. This was the perfect wedding. Not because of the lavish ceremonial hall or the outstanding formal robe and wedding dress. Face geniuses. This is why they say the face completes everything. This wedding ceremony was perfect, with just the bride and groom flaunting their beauty. This image of the two of them, walking at a steady pace with their arms linked, was vividly engraved in people's minds. Click. The reporter's hand slipped and pressed the shutter because they were staring blankly. That hall was so quiet that such a small noise sounded so loud. The other reporters came to their senses at the sound and hurriedly began to press their shutters. This was just not for saving information. They're bound with a sense of duty to make this image known to the general populace and leave it for future generations. The performing band, which had also paused, began to play again after hearing the shutter sound, almost as if their artistic souls were inspired. The wedding marching tunes suddenly sounded more expressive. Somehow, even the gems looked like they were sparkling as hard as they could. The flowers seemed to bloom even more, and even the path that the bride and groom were walking on looked like it was doing its best to support them. That's the end of chapter 54. Now, for chapter 55. The union of the two is not a simple union of a man and a woman, but a sacred ending to long-standing hostility between Sylvanus and Irga. Through this marriage, these two countries will achieve peace and harmony. The priest wars went on for a long time. He was quite moved, so he spoke more passionately than usual. Let us begin and wish blessings on the future of this bride and groom. People are usually the most susceptible to what they say. He had already felt inspired by this marriage for peace, so his excitement was double. I looked at Tarkan and Aristine, who looked like a pair of a god and goddess, and spoke his final words. Now, you may kiss to seal your vow. Flint. Aristine felt Tarkan's body tense for a moment, as she was holding his arm. When she turned to face him, she could tell he was quite taken aback, even though he was trying to manage his expression. However, Aristine couldn't understand his hesitation at all. In weddings, a kiss of affirmation was a fundamental yet important procedure. It wasn't like this event came out of nowhere, so she didn't get why he was so thrown off. They did say people get emotional on their wedding day. Then again, he's a very shy man. The more they waited, the more bashful he would get. So it might be better if she gave him a hand. Let's get it over with. It's okay, Tarkan. Aristine patted Tarkan's arm. It's just one part of your body touching another very briefly. You don't need to be so shy. Tarkan looked at Aristine, who was talking to him seriously, while looking into his eyes, and he felt a little speechless. Aristine was reassuring him, and even gave him a slight nod, with the most reliable expression on her face. Shy? Who the hell was she calling shy? If anyone was shy here, shouldn't that be the new bride? However, the new bride, who was expected to be shy and embarrassed, was patting her new groom sincerely and telling him to trust her. When Tarkan didn't say anything because he was dumbfounded, Aristine seemed to interpret his silence another way and squeezed his arm as if she was trying to instill encourage in him. Tarkan's eyes twitched at the movement of the soft hand tightening around his arm muscles. It's really no big deal. No big deal? Have you done it enough to say that? Tarkan himself didn't know why he asked that kind of question. Even if she had kissed another man countless times, it had nothing to do with him. What? Why are you taking it that way? All I'm saying is, it's just body parts touching. It's no such a big deal. Aristine whispered as if she was frustrated. Tarkan's left eyebrow rose up. So are you saying you've done it a lot with another guy? Or not? Why are you avoiding the answer? Tarkan looked down at Aristine's small face with dissatisfaction. Her face was expressionless as always, so he couldn't tell what she was thinking. Whatever, that's none of my business. Tarkan thought to himself, as if making a resolution. She was his counterpart in an arranged marriage, and like she said, they were merely business partners. It was not his concern how she got along with another man, nor did he care. It's just a simple touch, just like I'm holding your arm right now. Aristine's fingers slid over his skin, which was exposed between his gloves and sleeves. The bare skin were touching each other. This is not different from a kiss. Her soft whispering voice flitted past his ears like a spring breeze. This is a kiss, too? Tarkan's gaze fell on his forearm. Her fingers were burrowing into the cup, in his modest and disciplined attire. He felt a little cold. On the other hand, she must feel like his skin was hot. But as they touched each other, their body heat was gradually transferred, and soon enough, the feeling of hot and cold disappeared, like they had become one. A kiss. Flint. Tarkan's muscles contracted again. As she was in contact with him, Aristine felt it and looked up at him as though asking why. Her clean, clear, and glimmering eyes, for some reason, it was hard for Tarkan to look into those eyes. It felt like there was heat rising in his body. Aristine's fingers felt a little more vivid and cool. I wonder why they were whispering about. A young miss sitting in the guest seats with her hands clasped in front of her chest mumbled, as she stared at the bride and groom. The two of them paused just before kissing, and they were looking deeply into each other's eyes and whispering to each other. That sight made people's hearts flutter just by watching them. The beaded crystals that adorned the ceremonial hall reflected light on the bride and groom, illuminating them brilliantly. It was as if light was shining from the two of them. Aristine's wedding dress was a dazzling pure white, and the jewels and white gold chain hanging from it sparkled with light. It was a scene that seemed impossible to replicate, even if you tried to recreate it in an opera house. The sight of the bride and groom whispering softly to each other, while looking only at each other at a distance close enough to touch. They must be whispering their love. This cannot be a loveless arranged marriage. It started out as an arranged marriage, but turned out to be true love. A wreath full of charming flowers lay on Aristine's head, while a bouquet of flowers rested in her arms. Their appearance evoked a more romantic imagination in those who saw her. It seemed as if there was a burning and desperate love story between the two that no one knew about. No, it didn't just seem like it. There certainly was one. For example, let's say two people fell in love with each other at first sight and decided to run away and secretly get married, despite their families' opposition. Then the woman fakes her death, but the man thinks she's really dead and follows after her, and the woman wakes up and follows him in death as well. That kind of a story. A truly beautiful love. A love that will never die. Your Highnesses, I wish you happiness. The young misses, who were full of dreams and romance, cheered for the two of them with tears in their eyes. In reality, the people concerned were having an unrelated conversation, but their faces made it seem like they were having a fiery love exchange. Well, the chances of that happening was very low. Oh my gosh, I just heard His Highness Tarkan say something. Really? What did he say? I will never look at anyone else for the rest of my life, and I will only love you. That's what he said. I knew it. I heard it too. He said, even if I have to sacrifice my soul, I will definitely make you happy. Her Highness must be so touched. Imagine how moving it must be to pledge your future together. Before the sealing kiss, They look at each other and whisper their eternal love. So now everything was ready. Now only one thing was left. A kiss. Kiss, kiss, kiss. The wedding guests smiled delightedly. No one knew why they were getting excited when the person kissing was someone else. People struggled to hide their picking gums, and finally, the bride and groom stopped whispering and looked at each other. Their lips slowly and steadily drew closer. That's the end of chapter 55. So, let's get into chapter 56, where we will finally have our epic kiss. Tarkan's body stiffened at the soft and tender sensation. He could feel Aristine's breath. It was a light and weak breath as a small bird. This was not a kiss, just a skin-to-skin contact. Like she said, it was nothing much. Aristine's lips didn't even touch his. She groaned audibly before pulling Tarkan closer and placing her lips right next to his lips. Her lips touched the area just below his lips and slightly to the left. Is this something shaking to be about? Tarkan froze on the spot, unable to do anything. When he finally looked down, he saw Aristine's face. Her long eyelashes and delicate features looked out of focus and a little fuzzy. And maybe because of that, he could feel her warmth more vividly. To complete the kiss, Aristine had thrust herself into Tarkan's arm. Her body was so soft that it felt like it would break if he applied a little force. He already knew she was a thin person, but somehow that fact felt more distinct today. She smelled sweet. Perhaps it was because of the flowers that she was holding. Her long eyelashes quivered and Aristine's eyes flew open. Eyes akin to the dawning sky peered into his own. Their eyes met at the closest distance possible. It only lasted for a moment. Aristine straightened herself immediately. It was only after the warmth in his arms disappeared that Tarkan straightened himself as well. His dazed senses returned. Woohoo! People were cheering for them. The sound of cheering that had been muffled, as if he was submerged in water, suddenly grew clearer. Tarkan turned to look at the guests. For some reason, people were responded very enthusiastically. They are that happy about this marriage? Everyone wanted the war to end, except a very small minority. With this marriage, the war was over, so naturally, it deserved to be cheered. I could see young misses and madams of noble families sniffling, seemingly overwhelmed with happiness that the war was over. Aristine flashed them a bright smile in a response. Tarkan looked down at her smiling face. Because he had a higher line of sight, he could see the Lysianthus wreath on her head more clearly, and Aristine's face was slightly obscured by the flowers. Tarkan's eyes rested on her face for a few moments. Then his gaze turned to the queen who was grinding her teeth. Sure enough, her face had hardened and turned blue, and she was glaring at them like she wanted to rip him apart. she seemed irritated and displeased that the wedding was so well received. When he saw Duke's careless lips trembling, the corner of Tarquin's mouth curved upwards. The cheers grew louder. The two of them looked like the perfect pair of newlyweds. And so the bride and groom left the ceremonial hall with the blessing of numerous people. A rain of flowers poured over them. Now there was only one thing left in the wedding itinerary: the wedding parade. The people of Irigo were gathering droves in the plaza, outside the ceremonial hall. The crowd filled the bus plaza, and an endless trail of people stood along the path of the wedding parade. Everyone was curious about the bride who would bring peace and the end of the war. Did you hear she came in an old-fashioned carriage on purpose to see people who suffered from the war? My goodness, all that distance? Not only that, they say she's a princess who rarely left the castle because of her weak body, so that's amazing of her. To think the princess didn't think of her health, but thought of us. True. This must be why she's getting married, for the sake of peace. During the official audience, Aristine spoke about why she had to use the difficult old-fashioned carriage instead of the portal, and that discussion was already known among the people. This was a result of Aristine's efforts for her business partner while they were preparing for the wedding. It goes without saying that the end of the war was welcomed by all common people. As people living in Irigo, which was surrounded by demonic beasts on all sides, the longer the war with Sylvanus went on, the more anxious they would be. However, now that the war was over, there was no need to worry about whether the demonic beasts would use the conflict as an opportunity to invade. People were excited like they were celebrating a festival. It's not that they had no bias against Sylvanians, but such things had been pushed aside because of the circumstances. Furthermore, Tarquin was a hero to the common people. The fact that he defeated the great demonic beast, Murzika, at the age of 10, made him no different from a living legend. And Tarquin's legend was continuing even till this day. The guardian of Irigo, Tarquin, they all desire for his bride to be someone special. Those who had taken the good cynic's boats have been waiting here since last night. That was how much people were thirsting to the royal couple in person. After a long wait, the door finally opened. Yeah! People were so happy that the door was even moving, that they screamed before they even saw the bride or the groom. Finally, Aristine and Tarquin emerged. Wow! A loud exclamation rippled through the air. Perhaps startled by the shouts of joy that they were like fireworks, the eyes of the new bride widened as she looked around. Then, seeing the Irigo people welcoming her, she smiled brightly and waved her hand. Seeing this, the people looked moved and overwhelmed with emotions. Our princess bride is the most dignified and beautiful woman there is. This fairy is our princess bride. Our princess is a goddess, not a human. From their standpoint, as a common people, the beauty of the royal family was something they actually cared about. There were quite a few cases where they got into a war of nerves with other countries because of it. The more outstanding and charming the royal family was, the better. It was also a matter of national pride, with a handsome national hero and a beautiful fairy princess together. Their sight was full of brightness, as if the sun had risen from the ground. They felt full even without eating anything. A sudden sense of patriotism burned with them, and they raised their voices and shouted, "Long live His Highness Tarkan! Long live Her Highness Aristine! Glory to your path ahead! May your days be happy!" These were normally common sayings yelled by people when they gathered to celebrate a wedding in the royal family. But somehow it was full of sincerity today compared to other times. The newlyweds walked side by side towards the carriage, amidst the cheers of the people. The carriage, made for this monumental day, was lavishly decorated with gold and malachite as the main elements, while adorned with a variety of finely crafted gems such as diamond, emeralds, and garnets. The carriage had a roof with more openings all around, and flowers bloomed gorgeously on its pillars. It was a carriage that seemed to emerge from the fantasy they had all dreamed of. Then the couple, who also seemed to have come from a fantasy, stopped before the carriage. That's the end of chapter 56. And finally, the last chapter of the day, chapter 57. Instead of the footman, the groom, Tarkan opened the carriage door for Aristine. Aristine took Tarkan's hand and climbed into the golden carriage. The long train of her dress fell mesmerizingly behind her. "Oh," the people watching this sighed in unison. This was a scene everyone had dreamt of, at least once in their life. She was merely being escorted onto the carriage, but it felt as if there was no sense more romantic than this. Once the newlyweds sat down next to each other, the carriage began to move gently. The wedding parade was set to make a circle around the capital's main road, then end at Tarkan's palace. It was only when that was done that the wedding ceremony was truly over. The wedding parade was set to make the wedding parade was a tool to inform people about the couple's marriage, but it also had an important meaning. One lap around the royal capital stood for a long journey. In other words, a lifetime. Arriving at the house where the bride and groom would live together meant that the couple would live together safely for the rest of their lives. It meant that no matter what happens on the journey together in the future, they would be together just as they go home together on the wedding day. It was a superstition, but in reality, it was more like a prayer or a blessing or a pledge. The married couple makes a pledge in front of everyone, and people bless their future and stand witness to it. We'll be getting divorced in a few years, though. Aristine thought indifferently. Although they might arrive at Tarkan's place without any issues after circling the royal capital, their ending was predetermined. This was not going to end with, and they lived happily ever after, no matter what happened. Because I plan to get a clean divorce as soon as Tarkan gets on the throne. Also, the wedding parade was practically meaningless to her. It felt strange to see people so cheerful and responsive. Aristine was a princess, but she never appeared in public. When she saw people waving at her, she felt somewhat embarrassed, and it tickled her heart. Their lips were spread in radiant smiles, their eyes curving arc, and they had highly spirited expressions. Even though Aristine wasn't particularly aware of it, her face had a faint smile when she saw the various expressions people had. The carriage was moving very slowly today. The royal guards were controlling the area, but there were excited people who were leaping at the chance to see Tarkan and Aristine even a little closer. So the ranks were scattered a few times. After watching the people for a while, Aristine turned to look at Tarkan. He had been acting strangely for some time now. He was being too quiet, and he looked as if his mind was elsewhere. And his expression was also fiercer than usual. Come on. Regardless of what it is, you shouldn't wear a frown. Though there were people who would love to see that. Tarkan, what? Came his curt reply. Normally, people would stiffen due to the pressure coming from Tarkan and shrink away. But Aristine drew closer to him instead. She even turned her whole body to face Tarkan. Tried smiling. What? Tarkan raised a brow at the random remark. The people love and treasure you so much. It will be good to give them a smile. Your expression is totally stiff right now. My expression is always like this. Despite that, people revere Tarkan because he was charismatic. Still, you should smile today. We got married after all. Tarkan paused. Those words were sounded strange. It felt subtle and implicit, perhaps even sweet. There's something you're misunderstanding. Just when Tarkan frowned and began to speak, Aristine went, ah, and covered Tarkan's face with both hands. Yeah! Piercing squeals rang out from the spectating crowd. It couldn't be called cheers anymore. They were truly screaming. People were squealing over the newlywed sweetened couple-like behavior. Reporters pressed their shutters ardently as if they wanted to break their finger, regardless of the reaction of their surroundings. The two people in their carriage didn't care. Aristine wasn't used to caring about other people's gazes in the first place, while Tarkan was too taken aback by Aristine's actions. Aristine held Tarkan's cheeks and rubbed the corners of his lips slyly. Tarkan flinched at the soft touch so close to his lips. Smile. Let go. I'll let go if you smile. I said let go. I said if you will smile. The two of them bickered in the golden carriage. To others, it looked like the new bride was holding the groom's cheeks gently, and they were having a lovey-dovey moment. Their handsomeness and beauty were enough that people felt satisfied just by looking at them, and seeing such a scene made them feel even more satisfied. But as they kept watching, they felt like a cold wind was blowing from the left. Couples to tell. Ah, no, it shouldn't. This is our hero, His Highness Tarkan. Let's leave our prince alone. The devout singles exchanged secret signs. The couple who didn't know what sort of agreement was taking place within a certain religion were still quarreling about smiles. You think marrying you is a reason for me to smile? Aristine nodded confidently. I'm your business partner, and both of us are tied in the same political fate. Wouldn't it be better for us to be seen as a couple with good relationship, rather than a bad one, especially in situations where our union implies peace? That's the reason? Huh? Aristine tilted her head at Tarkan's question, as if to ask what other reason could there be. Seeing the question on her face, Tarkan kept his mouth shut. Is this woman numb to this marriage or what? She didn't seem to have any anxiety at all, or any thoughts about the matter. They say that some brides get depressed before the wedding, but she didn't have such signs at all. Even people who marry for love get depressed. Talk less of those who were in an arranged marriage with no feelings for each other at all. She's completely fine, yet why do I keep... He felt like an idiot for reacting to every meaningless thing, Aristine said. Rather, it seemed like Tarkan was the one more conscious about the fact that he was getting married and lost in thought. And there's that, too. He never even imagined that the bride would be the one to pull him in. When he thought about it now, it was quite ridiculous. Aristine's slender arms wouldn't be able to make him budge, no matter how hard she pulled. But perhaps he was just surprised that his body leaned over towards her. Aristine didn't let the chance go and stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. Tarkan's forehead creased as he suddenly remembered that scene. He didn't know that his earlobes were bright red. Suddenly he grew very conscious of Aristine's palms and fingers, which were holding his cheeks. Unlike himself, who was a warrior, her hands were soft without a single callus. The bare skins were touching each other. This is not different from a kiss. Aristine's whisper seemed to linger in his ears again. Tarkan wanted to shake off her hand, but he couldn't do it. Because I think I'm too thrown off by what she says. Right. That was why. That is the end of chapter 57. I hope you enjoyed and have a good night.